Okay, let's unpack this. There's a quiet truth that a lot of parents discover, often when it's just a little too late. And it's all about co-curricular excellence. So today we're doing a deep dive into the architecture of achievement. We're looking at what happens when a student who is, incredibly talented outside of their core academics moves schools, cities, even countries, and how that excellence is, well, judged by the world's most demanding institutions.
It's the ultimate, and I have to say, often painful reality check. You have parents, and of course the students themselves, pouring years of passion, effort, money into things like classical music, competitive coding, high-level sports, you name it. They know intimately that their child has this extraordinary talent and commitment,
Right.
but then they relocate, or the university application cycle kicks in. And that entire skill set, that whole history of commitment can suddenly become, well, it can become utterly invisible.
Invisible. That's more than just a word, isn't it? It's really a failure state in the modern education system. The talent is still there. It's inside the student. But the verifiable proof, that administrative architecture we mentioned, is just gone.
It's gone.
So our mission today, for you, the learner, is to really get to grips with which activities carry portable capital, which achievements are built on foundations that are sturdy enough to survive a switch in school boards or an international move. Because the most frustrating scenario, and frankly the most costly, is exactly this. The university application lands, and the admissions officer who is trained to filter just asks flatly, "Where's the evidence?"
And that evidence gap is enormous. It gets so much wider when you're crossing educational systems, especially moving from, say, local Indian boards to international applications in the US or Canada or the UK. We're dealing with global standards here, and they operate on a totally different principle. They are inherently skeptical of any undocumented claim. The mantra is, and it's unforgiving, if you can't verify it, they can't weigh it. It's that simple. And it's a harsh metric, but it's one we have to acknowledge if we're going to solve this problem.
And that skepticism, it leads us right into deconstructing this almost legacy idea, the myth of the extracurricular. When we use that word extra, we're automatically implying it's optional, it's secondary, something you do after the important academic work is done. It suggests a hierarchy.
Exactly. And that terminology is fundamentally obsolete. It's misleading in a global context. We really have to stop using it if we want to secure a student's full value. Universities, the ones that are really forward-thinking, have moved past this distinction. They're not sitting there putting a student's life into two boxes, primary academics here and extra fun stuff over there. That division just makes no sense anymore.
So if they're not looking at it as an extra activity, what are they looking for? I mean, if an admissions officer is reviewing a profile, what's the unifying factor they're searching for, whether it's volunteering or, advanced astrophysics?
They're seeing character. They are seeing capability, initiative, and, this is the critical one, proof of commitment over time. The activity itself, the music, the debate, the community service, that's just the vehicle.
The vehicle.
Yes, it's the specialized environment where the student demonstrates those core transferable traits. The activity itself isn't the merit. The skill you get from it, the sustained effort, the leadership you can prove, that is the merit. It's the proof of character under pressure.
That shifts the whole focus.
Yeah.
So it's not about just ticking a box that says, I was in the debate club. It's about what that participation proves about your ability to research, to argue, to handle pressure, to prepare for the long haul.
Absolutely. The core issue we see again and again, especially with students transitioning from local systems to, highly competitive global applications, it's not a lack of talent. It's not a lack of participation. Indian students across all boards are incredibly active. The problem is strictly twofold: documentation and continuity. If those records are scattered or inconsistent or they just don't exist, the participation holds very little weight. Because the university can't easily and quickly verify the depth of the claim, it forces them to just assume the lowest level of involvement.
Okay, let's dive into what this buzzword holistic actually means on a global scale. It's so overused, it's almost meaningless sometimes. Universities aren't just, checking a box that says, did activity X, Y, or Z. They're assessing something much deeper.
They're looking for specific, transferable, demonstrable skills. Skills that indicate future success and, importantly, retention at their institution. We've identified 5 key elements that activities must demonstrate to have that global value. They're looking for evidence of leadership, teamwork, discipline, creativity, and that absolutely essential element: long-term engagement.
I want to spend a bit of time on these 5. Can you elaborate on why these traits are, the real currency of global admissions? Because a parent might just argue, well, my child won a competition. Isn't that proof enough?
That's a great question. Winning a competition is proof of a singular high-point achievement, but it doesn't necessarily prove the character required to sustain success. Let's break down discipline first. A student who spends 4 years training in classical Hindustani music, practicing for 90 minutes every single day, has demonstrated extreme discipline, a commitment to a challenging long-term goal. That translates directly into academic success, into the ability to manage a complex university workload, into resilience. Admissions officers are hunting for that evidence of sustained effort, proof the student won't just quit when a course gets tough.
So it's the difference between discipline and just compliance. Compliance is doing it because someone tells you to. Discipline is that internal drive that keeps you going when no one is watching.
Precisely. And that internal drive is evidenced through things like practice logs, attendance records that span multiple years, or progression through graded external certification levels. Then you look at leadership and teamwork. We don't mean a generic title like school prefect. We mean verifiable actions. Did you lead a community project? Did you manage a budget for the yearbook? Did you organize a large-scale event? These things demonstrate organizational skills and emotional intelligence. Those are critical in any professional setting.
And what about creativity? That feels like it could be the hardest one to document objectively.
Creativity in this context isn't just about art or writing. It's about problem solving. It's original thinking. Did the students solve a real community problem through their service? Did they launch an original coding project? You see, the activities they value are the ones showing that commitment over time, not isolated achievements like a prize from a one-day competition. The core question from the admissions committee is designed to filter out the superficial. It's always, what did this student commit to, for how long, and what did they build or change in the process?
This is where it gets really actionable for our listener. We need a clear sort of 3-part litmus test. How do you determine if a co-curricular activity has that portable capital we're talking about?
Okay, these 3 pillars are the essential transferability test. If an activity fails even one of them, its global value plummets significantly. It becomes a risk for the admissions officer to even consider it seriously.
Pillar 1. Is it recognized beyond one school? So if the achievement is an internal Star Student of the Month award, or it's only verifiable by a teacher who might leave next year, it just doesn't travel well. It needs an external reference point.
That external reference point is non-negotiable for global acceptance. It has to be linked to a national organization like the VIECCE or a state sports federation, or a recognized international league, or an external certifying body like Trinity or ABRSM for music. That external validation provides instant zero-friction credibility.
Pillar 2. Does it have verifiable records? We're talking hard data here. Not just a photo on the school website, but signed practice logs, official competition results, formal certificates that explicitly detail duration and achievement, not just attendance.
And this is where the devil lives in the details. Verifiable means the university can, in theory, contact an external body. Or, failing that, the evidence is so meticulously collated by the student that it resists skepticism. It needs to show quantified impact.
And pillar 3, the commitment metric. Does it show progression over years? A student who started the environmental club in grade 8, served in junior roles, and then became president in grade 12. That tells a clear, undeniable story, a story of growth.
And if the activity exists only in a personal diary, or worse, in an internal school database that gets wiped when you graduate or transfer, the capital is trapped. We call this the locked capital risk. We see brilliant students moving from prestigious schools in India, and they realize their entire 4 years of debate or robotics achievements are untraceable because the school's internal system was the only record. The only thing they have is a vague one-line entry on a report card.
Which leads directly to this parental blind spot we need to talk about. Parents are so focused on the initial action, enrolling the kids, paying the fees, doing the driving. They're focused on the activity, but they forget the administrative tasks that convert all that effort into portable equity.
It's the difference between doing the work and documenting the work professionally. The 3 forgotten tasks that have to become routine are archiving evidence systematically, tracking progression with actual metrics, and formalizing the learning through external validation or structured reflection.
Systematic archiving. That sounds a bit like homework, but it's really a professional skill. What does that actually look like for a 14-year-old?
It should be a dedicated digital portfolio, a single cloud folder, Google Drive, Dropbox, whatever labeled clearly by activity and year. You have to use consistent naming conventions. Activity achievement yourname.pdf. Use digital timestamps. If a photo is taken, it goes in the folder immediately. If you win a prize, the photo of the trophy, the official result sheet, the brochure, it all goes in the folder. You have to do it weekly or monthly. If you wait a whole year, you lose 90% of the small, consistent evidence that demonstrates that long-term commitment.
That level of rigor is what converts memory into actual merit.
Exactly. Talent without verifiable, chronologically organized proof just becomes a memory in an admissions file. And the consequence is severe. All that dedication gets discounted because the necessary paper trail or digital trail was never maintained. And that's the hard truth. You might have Olympic-level talent, but if you can't prove the journey, they'll treat you like someone who just started last week.
Okay, let's pivot and analyze specific contexts, starting with the CBSE, which governs a massive number of students in India. When we look at CBSE, we do see areas of strong institutional credibility. So what does the CBSE structure get right that gives these activities intrinsic value?
Well, CBSE offers some deeply structured, nationally recognized programs that give them immediate, high-level weight. The sheer scale and standardization of certain things is key. I'm talking about programs like the NCC, the National Cadet Corps. Achieving a specific rank in the NCC instantly demonstrates discipline, service, and organizational skill to any admissions committee anywhere in the world.
And Scouts and Guides would be similar, right? It carries that same official external structure.
Yes. And crucially, participation in national-level sports, where the results are governed by external bodies like the CBSE Sports Cluster or state federations. These carry inherent credibility because they are recognized beyond a single school campus. They have a known hierarchy: district, state, national. That's a language everyone understands. Also, school arts programs that link to external exams or national competitions have a good baseline. The credibility is built in.
The opportunities are strong, the credibility is there, and yet the source material highlights this critical problem. For many active CBSE students, the documentation still fails the transferability test, especially when they move abroad. Why does that institutional strength just crumble at the documentation stage?
It's a systemic issue. It's rooted in inconsistency and this expectation that the school is responsible for permanent archiving. So students participate, but they don't preserve the records themselves. They assume the school will handle it, but the records are scattered. They're in different offices from different years, maybe in a dusty file cabinet somewhere. They become incredibly difficult to retrieve years later.
And you mentioned the certificates themselves can be a problem.
They're a huge problem. They are so inconsistent. One year, a student gets a beautifully designed certificate detailing 5 specific skills. The next year, for an even higher achievement, they get a bland, one-sentence slip of paper signed by a temporary coordinator. That inconsistency just screams unprofessional to a global admissions officer. It creates doubt where you need absolute clarity.
And if the certificate is too specific to the school, like winner of the annual XYZ school inter-school quiz, that specificity actually weakens it internationally, doesn't it? The context is lost.
It absolutely does. International universities need data efficiency. They need context fast. An achievement needs to be benchmarked against something quantifiable and globally understood. If the only context is an internal school ranking, the admissions officer has to stop, research the school, verify the size of the competition. It slows everything down and it introduces skepticism. The records become barriers, not proof.
Okay, let me just push back on that for a second. Let's say a CBSE student genuinely won a regional sports cluster championship, a clear, high-level achievement. Does the lack of a perfectly formatted portfolio really render that worthless?
That's a crucial distinction. The achievement itself is never worthless. Winning is a fact. But the story of it, the impact of it, is severely weakened if the proof is messy. Think about it. Admissions officers are looking at thousands of applications. If another student has impeccable documentation for their championship and the CBSE student has a crumpled certificate and no logs, who do you think gets more attention? The achievement still counts, but the student loses the chance to frame it powerfully. They lose control of the narrative.
So let's get specific about that friction. When an application from a CBSE student lands on an admissions desk, what are those demanding questions they ask that go beyond just reading participation certificate?
They immediately filter out the general statements. They zero in on 4 key areas that require precision. Firstly, what level was the activity? District, state, national, international. This immediately establishes the competitive pool and the rarity of the achievement.
So the documentation has to explicitly state that hierarchy.
Precisely. Secondly, they ask, was the role competitive or purely participatory? Did you just show up, or did you win, place, or actively contribute to a measured outcome? They want results, not just attendance. Thirdly, what was the total duration? How many continuous years did you commit to this field? If you claim deep expertise in something but only have 1 year of fragmented involvement, the claim is instantly dismissed.
And finally, what I imagine is the ultimate test of character.
Yeah.
What verifiable responsibility or leadership role did this student hold? And this isn't just about titles, is it?
No. It's about quantified responsibility. Did you manage a budget, lead a project, mentor junior students, successfully handle a crisis? These are the real indicators of capability. The conclusion is firm. A generic participation certificate is just insufficient. It says, I was in the room that day, and that proves almost nothing about the character traits we discussed.
This is a critical moment for practical steps. We need to give clear, actionable strategies for CBSE parents or any learner listening to convert that participation into portable evidence.
Step 1 is non-negotiable. Maintain a comprehensive professional co-curricular portfolio. This has to be a dynamic, centralized digital document. It's a professional CV for your non-academic life, indexed for easy access.
And you must proactively request formal, descriptive letters from the school, going beyond those standard vague certificates.
Absolutely essential. Annually, or when you leave a school, you should request detailed letters from the principal or the relevant coordinator, the coach, the mentor. These letters must explicitly detail the student's specific contribution, the duration, the level, and, if possible, their leadership qualities. This forces the school to formalize the activity in a way the world can understand.
And finally, you have to connect it all back to that holistic university view, explicitly linking the activity to demonstrable learning outcomes.
This is the higher level analysis, moving from what I did to what I learned. So instead of the portfolio just saying, I volunteered at a community center, the student should analyze and state. Volunteered weekly for 2 years, managing supply delivery logistics, which demonstrated leadership and resulted in a documented 15% improvement in donation flow. You are translating action into evidence of skill and impact. The reality check for CBSE is this. The system offers strong opportunities, but their global value depends entirely on professional organization. The family has to fight the institutional tendency towards inconsistent record-keeping.
Okay, now let's move to state boards. This is where the challenge of documentation becomes, well, significantly more acute, often by design. We're talking about an environment where activities are often encouraged informally. Documentation is highly non-standardized, and arts and sports are frequently seen as a distant second to the singular focus on high-stakes board exams.
That is the core difference. State boards are, by necessity, focused on academic rigor for Indian competitive exams. So co-curricular provision can be wildly variable. It might be excellent in some elite schools or completely non-existent in others. It often depends on a single school's initiative. The kids in these systems have genuine talent, often because they seek out strong external training. But the school's institutional framework just doesn't prioritize or systematically capture that effort.
So the child genuinely develops real skills. They could be an amazing Kathak dancer training 10 hours a week externally, or a self-taught coder, but the lack of formal support within the school system undermines their ability to showcase it later.
Exactly. And this fragmentation undermines global applications fatally. When these students apply abroad, admissions bodies see a critical lack of a standard record for co-curriculars. Unlike CBSE, which at least has some recognized national structures, state board achievements often appear fragmented, disconnected. They rely on anecdotal evidence. There's no standard format an admissions officer can trust.
So if the school can't vouch for it with a standardized form, the achievement becomes incredibly difficult to verify quickly.
It introduces maximum friction. The stark truth is that talent genuinely exists, but the formal, portable proof is absent. Imagine an admissions officer reviewing 50 applications that all clearly log and verify 4 years of activity versus one state board application that claims similar depth but requires multiple follow-ups, calls to private tutors. The ambiguous claim is naturally sidelined. Talent without institutional backing has to work twice as hard on verification. It's unfair, but it's the reality.
Let's use a scenario here. A student achieves district-level excellence in fencing through a private academy while in a state board school. But when they move internationally, the only proof is the coach's handwritten, non-standard logbook. And then that logbook gets lost in the move.
That is the perfect locked capital war story. The fencing skills are real. The discipline is real. But if that logbook, the sole objective evidence of 4 years of dedicated training, is lost, the student has zero portable proof. They're left with just a verbal claim. The scholarship, the competitive program that might have been secured by proving that commitment, is now out of reach, all because of an administrative failure.
Okay, so this is where proactive strategies become absolutely vital. How can state board students overcome these deficiencies and build their own globally recognized infrastructure?
They have to step entirely outside the school framework for validation where possible. They have to create their own parallel, externally validated records. It's the only way.
So leveraging external certifications becomes paramount.
Absolutely essential. If you're studying music, pursue certifications from Trinity College London or ABRSM. These qualifications are universally understood. If you're in programming, target industry certifications, Google, Microsoft, or participate in nationally organized hackathons. This external validation provides the objectivity that the state board infrastructure just cannot provide.
And enrolling in academies or clubs that are part of a national or international network.
Yes. If you join a chess club, make sure it's affiliated with FID or the National Federation. If you're doing debate, link your activity to national debate organizations. That linkage allows the university to verify your claim via an external authoritative source, not just a single, unverifiable school staff member.
And moving away from paper, we have to talk about creating those robust digital portfolios. What makes a portfolio robust?
A robust digital portfolio is a curated system, not just a folder of photos. It must contain the 3 Ps: proof, progression, and planning. Proof is every certificate, result, and signed log. Progression is shown through chronologically ordered media videos of performances, photos of work, and detailed logs documenting hours and milestones. Planning is evidenced by linking these activities to reflections and goals.
And finally, the gold standard for verification, mentor attestations. This is critical when the school isn't the primary authority.
It is the ultimate tool for overcoming fragmentation. Since the school principal might not be the authority on your external music lessons, securing formal letters of recommendation from your external coaches or tutors is crucial. These attestations should be professional, on letterhead, and must detail the duration, the specific skills, the hours per week, and any competitive results.
This is crucial encouragement then. State board students can absolutely compete globally, but they have to recognize they're operating in a documentation deficit and compensate by creating their own professional-grade record-keeping system.
That's the hard-earned reality check. Holistic development is not blocked by the state board curriculum. It's crippled by neglecting the meticulous documentation required to prove it happened. The student and parent must become proactive, professional record keepers, turning a fragmented reality into a coherent, verifiable story.
Now we transition to the International Baccalaureate, or IB, model. And this is a significant institutional difference, because here, co-curriculars are not just appended to the curriculum, they are fundamentally, structurally embedded within it.
This changes the entire discussion. It goes from how do I create proof to the system mandates that I create proof. The mechanism for this is CAS Creativity Activity Service, which is a non-negotiable graduation requirement.
CAS is the mandatory engine of holistic education in the IB system, and it comes with very specific requirements that ensure depth. Things like reflections, long-term projects with specific goals, and required learning outcomes that have to be documented over the 2 years of the diploma program.
Right. Holistic development in the IB system isn't optional. It is formally assessed, monitored, and documented through a structured portfolio that the student maintains and submits. The structure itself forces the student to engage, track, and reflect, the very things students in other boards often fail to do systematically.
So what is it about the IB system's structure that naturally creates that portability and makes the evidence transfer so well globally?
It's the system's inherent demand for continuous, structured reflection and logging. IB students are mandated to log activities consistently. They have to articulate why they chose an activity and what they learned from it. That reflective process moves the activity beyond just action into actual metacognition. The student is thinking about their own thinking and learning.
They have to connect the dots themselves, linking the activity to the larger learning outcomes the IB mandates.
Precisely. They have to show progression over time through their reflections, demonstrating how their skill or commitment developed. And perhaps most importantly, for the university audience, they must explicitly connect their action to a measurable impact or a defined learning outcome.
So when a university admissions officer reviews an IB application, this structure produces evidence that they can understand clearly and verify easily. The student's holistic story is instantly readable globally because the language of CAS is universal in international education. It removes that friction we talked about.
That readability is the core benefit. An admissions committee doesn't have to guess if volunteering was impactful. The CAS reflection, if it's done well, explicitly outlines the impact, the challenges, the failures, and the personal growth. They trust the system because they know a vetted IB coordinator is overseeing the whole process.
However, the robustness of the system leads to a peculiar and, I'd say, dangerous risk, the risk of superficial engagement. This is the pitfall for IB students who treat CAS just as a requirement, as paperwork to be completed.
That risk is perhaps the single biggest failure point of the IB system. CAS is not simply volunteering to get a photo op. It is absolutely not a box-ticking exercise where you meet the minimum requirements with minimal effort.
And that danger of last-minute bursts of activity to meet the hour requirements. That must be easy for an experienced admissions officer to spot, right? Especially on the reflective writing.
It is extremely evident, and it severely weakens the application because it demonstrates a lack of sincerity. Inauthentic reflections are easy to spot. They focus on the surface-level activity, I cleaned the park for 6 hours, rather than the learning outcome. They miss the, through this project I realized part.
If the student's reflection is only descriptive, not analytical, the application just falls flat.
Precisely. Poorly documented or obviously insincere CAS records significantly weaken applications, despite the robust framework. The framework is just a vessel. If the contents, the student's effort, and reflection are hollow, the application is damaged.
So, when does IB's holistic approach truly achieve its goal? What are the conditions for success that make CAS a powerful tool instead of just a chore?
Success hinges entirely on sincerity and student ownership. First, students have to choose meaningful activities that align with genuine interests, not just things that look good on a resume. If you despise running, a marathon CAS project will yield hollow, unauthentic reflections.
Authentic reflections are paramount. They need to show vulnerability, self-awareness, genuine growth, not just regurgitated philosophy from the internet.
Yes, and this is where parents need to shift from being managers to being supportive facilitators. They should avoid micromanagement, let the student own it, let them have the freedom to fail. The projects must be driven by student initiative. And finally, continuity must be maintained, even if the student changes IB schools. It has to be seen as a cumulative 2-year journey.
The highest aspiration, then, is for CAS to become an ingrained life skill learning, how to set goals, act, assess, and reflect, not just a graduation requirement.
That's the immense power of the IB model when it's done right. It sets a global standard for documenting growth. But we have to end with the final reality check. The IB framework documents talent, it doesn't magically create it. Without sincerity and commitment, CAS is just reduced to empty paperwork, and the holistic claim is nullified. The structure is only as strong as the student's authentic engagement within it.
This has been an absolutely vital, granular journey through 3 very different approaches, from the highly structured IB to the nationally recognized but inconsistent CBSE to the often ad hoc state boards. As we wrap up this deep dive, let's distill the core principles the listener needs to take away. The litmus test for building portable co-curricular capital, regardless of their current board.
We've established that the onus is ultimately on the individual, the student, and the parent, not the institution, to ensure that portability. The essential questions the listener should use as a litmus test for any activity are fourfold, and they must be asked proactively.
Number 1, will this activity be recognized elsewhere, beyond the specific school premises? Does it connect to a state, national, or international framework that provides that external validation?
Number 2, is its progress tracked year by year? Does it show depth, commitment, and sustained progression, not just isolated instances of attendance? Are there verifiable logs or certified levels that illustrate growth?
Number 3, can the evidence survive a school relocation, a lost logbook, or a change in staff? Is the portfolio housed digitally in a structure that you control, not trapped in the school's internal system? This is the security measure.
And finally, number 4, the psychological anchor that fuels it all. Does the child understand the fundamental why behind their effort? Are they engaged because they genuinely value the learning, or are they just checking a box? That why is the engine that generates the authenticity admissions officers are looking for.
When you look at those 4 questions, the definition of true holistic education becomes incredibly clear. It cuts through all the marketing noise. It is not about doing many different things superficially, signing up for 5 different activities for 3 months each, just to boast about breadth.
It's the exact opposite, and this is the governing principle for global admissions. Depth over breadth. They want to see someone who stuck with something for years, overcame challenges, developed mastery, and demonstrated profound growth. They want a 4-year story, not for one-page anecdotes.
This has been such a vital reality check. It underscores that administration, organization, documentation, these aren't just bureaucratic chores. They are the key infrastructure that unlocks the global value of a student's talent and hard work.
Indeed. Talent and passion are the foundation, but meticulous professional documentation is the infrastructure that allows that foundation to be seen, appreciated, and rewarded globally. Without the infrastructure, the talent remains landlocked.
So here's the final provocative thought for you, the learner. Remember this when you look at your child's schedule or your own aspirations. Talent that stays undocumented does not disappear. It simply goes unnoticed. And in the global arena, the difference between unseen effort and rewarded effort is nothing more than a well-maintained, portable digital portfolio.
The call to action is clear. Focus on building profound skills, meticulously record that growth as if your future depends on it, and ensure that hard work travels as far as their ambitions demand. Secure the evidence, and you secure the value.